It's ironic, really. For most of my life, I was a musician, and I would literally dream of the day when I'd be known as a business person. Fast forward to present day, I've got friends and colleagues and clients who have been in my life for maybe even 10 years or more, and they may have no clue that I was once known solely as a musician.
Composing music with a purpose.
My first memory is of music. I remember being at church and hearing the Christmas cantata, the play and the music there. It was just so incredible. That was my first memory. And the funny thing is, I kind of got my start in music as a result of that play that I heard when I was 3 years old. Now, I don't remember the next part of this story, but my parents told me that the music pastor from that church, now this was a church in Windsor, Ontario. It was a church of about 2,000 people. So the music pastor came over to our house, and I had this ridiculous little hippopotamus piano. And I guess 3-year-old me was tapping out the rhythms from the music that I had heard a week earlier in this play. Except nobody knew it except this one highly trained musician. And so he went over to my parents and he said, "Get this kid in music right away. He has a clear ear for music." So my parents waited a little while, but I started classical music training around 7 years of age. And I graduated from sort of an elementary teacher. Actually, my dad did some of our earlier lessons, but then I got sort of the proper teacher once I got into Royal Conservatory. And I was afraid of her. She was in her 80s, she was old school, she had 2 huge dogs, and I was a pretty shy kid. And I remember I just felt like I was doing everything wrong all the time. I never practiced. I felt like she could see that I didn't practice. I felt like she could see my soul. So I remember once she was going to the door. She used to get her milk actually delivered in glass bottles there. And she was going to the door to get the milkman. And I was just playing something on the piano there by myself. Now this piano teacher, she was a very, very well versed in classical music. And she came back and she said, "Hey, what is that? What is that music you were playing?" And I thought I was in trouble because it was just something that I'd come up with on my own. And so I told her, "No, it's just something I was playing around with." And she's like, "You're playing that in the recital." I don't remember having another conversation with anyone. I just remember when I was at the recital, I knew that I'd be playing one piece classical music and one piece that I had come up with myself. And I had to give it a name, and I did. I called it Twilight, ironically. And again, I'm not a millennial. This was long before the movie series. So anyway, I get to the recital now. I must have been 9 years of age there. I play the classical music piece that I was supposed to play like all the other students, and then I played the song that I had composed myself. And so there were about 50 parents there. There was polite applause when I was done both pieces. Then my music teacher got up there and said, "I'm not sure if you were looking at the program carefully, but that last piece of music was written by Gittens." So there was a little murmur that went through the crowd, and they said, "And this young man sitting right here is Gittens." And so there was a gasp, mostly from the Asian and the white parents. In fact, there was only Asian and white parents there, but they couldn't believe that this little kid had written that music. And finally, some probably half-drunk dad at the back yelled, "Encore!" And I knew that encore was a good thing, right? And so my piano teacher got back up and she said, "Okay, well, we'll bring him back at the end of the show. And then from there, we will get to hear from him again." So even though I was a shy kid, I knew that this was an opportunity to kind of do my thing, to add some stagecraft to this. So I'd been working on an arrangement of Chariots of Fire. And so when they called me back at the end, I played this epic version of Chariots of Fire. I feel like I used all 88 keys on the piano, and I got my first standing ovation, another encore. I ended up playing that song again. And that was the first time I remember sort of separating myself from my peers as a musician. Moving into my teens, I had a chance to travel all around the world. I won competitions at every level. I won music for composing for the different drama events around Ontario. And I actually started representing artists. I played at high-end events, weddings, funerals, auctions, and that sort of thing. And I was actually being prepared by my piano teacher to enter the music and business program at University of Toronto. And at that point, there was a conflict that was happening between my love of music and all the activities I was doing. And even though I can put it in words now, back then I couldn't really understand why there was this dissonance in my life. It might come as a surprise at this point in my life, but I was quite a shy child growing up. And like a lot of ambitious young people, I had this thing inside of me where I knew that just one day I would have something to say or something important that I would develop. And I was really concerned. I was very scared because I wasn't good at speaking up. I certainly couldn't speak in front of strangers, and even family members I hadn't seen in a while. I had a difficult time getting my ideas out. And so music for me was a refuge because I was able to sit at the piano and just express myself. But that beauty and that freedom was quickly met with frustration because I'm not a singer. I didn't sing growing up. I play instrumental music. And invariably, after I would play something that I had composed out of perhaps affection for some girl in my 7th grade or 6th grade class, someone would come over to me and say, "Oh, that song reminds me of my grandmother." And while that's a beautiful sentiment, like when you're an artist and you have artistic tendencies, you want your emotions to be expressed. And so I was very frustrated when it came to that. And then when we'd have people over and my mom or my dad would say, "Hey, perform for Auntie so-and-so," or perform for brother or sister so-and-so. I remember just never wanting to do it. Like I just absolutely never wanted to play the piano on call. Like it's not that I felt like I was a trained pet or something like that. I just didn't feel like I wanted to showcase on call for strangers. It got even worse as I started playing for higher end events and getting paid to do it. And I wouldn't say I went as far as resenting the people that were there because it was a well-paying job and I appreciate it, but it was very frustrating to express yourself in such a complete way and then have those emotions miss everyone who was in the room. Now, this is a personal thing. This is a personal thing because when you're a musician or a live performer, there's this symbiotic relationship that happens between you and the audience, where you give everything you have and they give you that energy right back, and nobody loses. Everybody wins. Everybody comes out of it energized. But that is a gift. That love of performance, that love of expressing yourself in a live forum, that's a gift. That's a talent. And while there is nothing in my life I have loved as long and as consistently as music, music to me is a lifelong infatuation. I'm genreless. I love Eastern music as much as Western music, as much as classical music, as much as opera music, as much as modern music. I'm not a music snob at all. But I had to realize that my love of music and my love of performance, those are two different things. I love music. I do not love performing. I never did. I never wanted to be in front of people. I always wanted just to express myself in my own way. And so even though I had spent years getting prepared to study music at University of Toronto, and I had spent years preparing to have a career as a musician, right around my late teens there, I decided that music is not going to be the way that I go. And even though I still played at a few events here and I still played at church and all of that, my career as a musician ended when my teens ended. I messed up in so many ways throughout the years following my teen years. I had limited successes, a whole bunch of failures, a lot of lessons though. And somewhere along the way, I realized that what I wanted wasn't to be a musician or not be a musician, or to be someone who's very successful or not someone who's very successful. I had a very myopic definition of success. What I really wanted was to be great. And the thing about greatness is there's no form of greatness that is made on the beliefs of somebody else. There's no form of greatness that uses the talents and the passions and the values of someone else. So the first step to greatness I discovered was becoming the most you. How cool for a shy kid to find out that the goal is to become the most me. So I don't need to separate my life into this quadrant and that quadrant and that one. I need to go deeper into my talents. I need to develop my passions, and I need to put every action in line with my values. But that's only half of the equation. The whole purpose of becoming the best possible you is to create the biggest positive impact possible. That's the equation. So I'm gonna be the most me, and I'm gonna create the biggest positive impact. So music had to be a part of that. It's impossible for me to do anything and not have music be a part of my life. But that's the difference, is before it was art for art's sake, an expression just to get my feelings out. These days, it's art with a purpose. Playing the piano, composing music is not just an expression anymore. It's art with a purpose. It's to deepen the connection between an idea and a belief system. It's to make that engagement that happens when an idea is coupled with art and is elevated on high. It's that opportunity to use beauty and to use intensity and to engage all of the senses into something that is much bigger than what is right in front of us. It's intangible, it's delicate, and it mirrors that beautiful opportunity and responsibility you have to create moments of greatness, where the cumulative effect of that greatness is a life worth living. So when I play the piano now, I think about, what is this gonna be? Where is this gonna go? And it excites me. It excites me to know that as I present my ideas, there's gonna be this beautiful support, which is art, which is music, which is 100% me. Choosing the space to compose in is an interesting one for me. It's a little different than when you're recording in a professional studio. That's a different set of criteria altogether. For composition, it's mostly about the area in which you feel the most inspired. And maybe on television you would see candles or different environments, but for me, it starts off when we even leave the house, like when we get into the car and we drive to the space to check it out. Has it been a good day? Did I start off with a workout? You know, what did we talk about? What music was playing on the stereo on the way there? And then when I get into a space, immediately does it feel right? Do I love it? And this is just the room itself. We haven't even gotten to the piano as yet. The piano is even more interesting as well, because the criteria when you're recording has to do with the action of the piano. You want to make sure that the levers are consistent. You want to make sure that the tenor of the piano is beautiful. You want to make sure the room that it's recorded in has all that sympathetic resonance that makes a piano sound like a piano. But in the composition phase, I like my pianos to be a little bit more weathered. I like to think of the stories of the people who have played that piano, how many different rooms that it sat in. I like to think that maybe that piano has its best taste behind it. It's a retirement piano, but it's still got all the bones. It's still a great instrument. It doesn't need to be perfectly in tune, but it certainly needs to reflect that someone's cared for it and that they've maintained it. So it's more art, I would say, goes into the process of choosing the room to compose in than actually recording it. It's a beautiful process. So once I actually choose the place and the piano to compose, then I want to clear my schedule. It's important, especially for when you have a busy schedule, to know that if I don't come up with something in the first hour or the second hour or the third hour, there's no penalty. I want to actually turn my phone off. I want to not have a clock in view. And I just want to sit there, think about what I'm trying to create, think about what key I want it to be in, what mood I want to create, and just have zero pressure. So at this point, even before I've come to the room, often I'll have my iPhone and I have apps that I have where I can play different melodies out. The funny thing is, I almost rarely use those melodies, but I like to record them in my phone just so that in my mind I've already set the tone for the feeling I want, but I don't think I've actually gone back and opened one of those early files and used them at all. So when I'm in the actual composition space, everything is happening that day. Technically, I guess it's kind of incredible, because if you were creating just music for enjoyment and listening, you would be thinking of the piano operating on its own. What I'm thinking is the fact that this is music that will support my voice. It will be underneath my voice. So I have a tenor voice, so I'm thinking about this portion of the piano, pretty much from the G below middle C to the C above middle C. I don't want too many notes in that region because it's going to mess up the frequencies that my voice is in. But I don't want to be too far outside the low end of that region because I want it to support the words that I'm saying as well. So that's a sort of art for a purpose, yes? It's a little different than just creating. I'm thinking that this will actually exist with my voice on top of it. At the same time, I want to think about how long the section is. Am I composing for piano, or am I composing that will later be played on many different instruments? So I'm thinking about that at that point. But once I have that melody worked out, written down and recorded just on an external recording device, then I start to build the chords around it. If it's going to be just a piano only composition at that point, then I'll start the arrangement maybe that day, maybe later. But if I know that this is going to be a whole orchestral one, sort of like the music that accompanies my early videos, we call it the greatness theme. When I composed that, I knew that there would be a full suite of instruments there. I knew I wanted a low register flute to take the lead, and I knew there'd be a percussive sound supporting it. So I had that ahead of time, so I would have skipped a step with arranging on the piano. But once I get to that point, I record what I have, and I don't perfect it, I don't polish it. I just want it to the point where I feel very strong about the body of work. And then I'll actually there's a little piano shop that I like to go to that has an old South African Steinway piano in the basement. I'll go there and I'll work out the arrangement, and then we'll go to the recording studio, and that's where you absolutely perfect it. You make sure that it's in time with a metronome for the actual final recording. Now, it's my process. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but I know that for me, when I am creating art, then from the moment that I begin it to the moment that I end it, it's a very sacred process for me, and it's something that I've had and I've used for as long as I can remember. The piano is perfect. It's a perfect instrument. It was me who needed to change. I was the one who needed to grow. I was the one who needed to learn the difference between success and greatness, between being a performer and making an impact. I was the one who had it all wrong. And now that I understand that greatness is about being the best possible me and creating the biggest positive impact, the piano is there waiting for me to define my greatness with art and music and light and words and imagery. It's time. I used to be known as a musician who dreamed of being a business person, but it's not about that anymore. I have this awesome opportunity and the sacred responsibility to become the absolute best expression of my talents, my passions and values, to create the biggest positive impact possible for myself, for the people I love, and the world around me. It's that time-honored process of greatness. It's this awesome, awesome reason to sit up straight, to adjust my chair, to open the lid, breathe in, breathe out, and compose.
Connect with Alexander Michael Gittens for keynote speaking and media details. For articles, information, and all social media links, visit alexandermichaelgittens.com.